Okay, hi, it's Chris Corrin speaking. I'm just going to go through, after request by Sam, just to talk through the Rapidfire 8 settings. I put a file into the documents folder in the VTA root with the settings file for a strategy I called Rapidfire 8. This was actually based on a requirement for the VTA to help scalping pretty much on a manual basis. Basically it was set up when I originally had a strategy for orange to white trades, and the document for that is actually in the documents folder in the main room, and spent quite a lot of time discussing the strategy, whether it's better just to take 7 or 8 quick pips on the full, or start splitting the trade, taking 7 and then leaving half running, and how effective was that. And after a lot of discussions at a trading session with Cash, we basically realized with the number of opportunities there were at the time, price action was a bit more active, volatile in the markets. We were getting so many orange to white setups that it was practical just to basically take the 7 pips on in full and then move on to the next trade. So spending basically as little as time in the market as possible, which obviously reduces risk and also reduces the stress as well. So when Sam introduced the VTA or the robot, I thought I could use the settings to simulate the rules that I've got in the orange to white document, and actually apply the same rules to the rest of the setups. So basically what this settings file is it allows you to basically, whatever the setups are that you particularly like, and I'll go through which ones I've got actually switched on, and basically set a fixed take profit of 8 pips and a stop loss of 10. Now that goes traditionally against you should have more, your take profit should be more than your stop loss, but I'm tending to finding if you limit the target down to 7 or 8 pips, you will actually achieve a 70 to 80% win rate, which more than offsets the allowance of a larger stop. So basically this also relies on you having one-click trade entries, so that the idea is that you get an alert, VTA alert, you go to the grids and your charts, you check the setup. If you like it, you'll click on it, enter the trade, and then basically you'll either come out with +8 or -10. Now, as a caveat to that, actually, I do have the dynamic stops turned on. So I do use the L5 and the L7 as a dynamic stop, which in some cases may actually mean you get stopped out even sooner than the -10, which obviously helps with the win to loss ratio. So this is very much I've switched the stochastics and the trendbot settings off. So this is very much a manual scalping system. You're in and out of the market, you take 8 pips, you move on to the next trade, the next setup. Now, ideally, my daily target is 30 pips, and generally with the help of the VTA, it should find it's quite easy to get 40, 50 pips. So if you wanted to do the power of 20, I think Sam's finding that in fact 40 pips is generally a good average of pips to get in a day of trading. So if you make your 2% 40 pips, then you should be able to use the power of 20 settings as well. I personally don't use them, but as I say, my daily target is 30 pips, and generally the use of the VTA traders tend to get a good day is 50 to 60 pips. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just talk through the settings file and just try and explain the reasons of why I have the settings as they are. The plan is that Sam will put this up on the website as a masterclass video, and then in the next week or so what we'll do is we'll hold a question and answer session in the VTA room where we welcome everyone along. If anyone's tried it or has got any questions, hopefully we'll get a thread going on the forum about this approach to trading. It's not to everyone's taste, I understand, but this is just a quick way of getting pips out of the market with the VTA robot giving you a bit of assistance. It's also a great learning tool because it does actually, when it throws up the settings, you're forced to look at the grids, and then you'll begin to recognise the patterns of why it's actually giving you a particular setup. Okay, so just going through very quickly, we'll run through the settings file. The title, just for admin purposes, when I create a new settings file, I will then I'll save it onto a chart, and I'll create a template of that chart, and I'll call it the same name as the settings file. So it makes life easier when you come to apply, or you want to know the expert settings that a particular chart's on. You can just right click and have a look at the title, and then if you want to apply that, you know that you have to take the template of the same name and apply it to the charts. So that's just a little admin trick that I use to keep everything in line. Now, the first thing to say is high news shutoff I have set to false, and medium news shutoff. At the moment with the PA as it is, I'm finding the high points of the day are around the news announcements when we do get a bit of volatility. As I say, this is a manual system, so you are there watching. You are responsible for taking the trades. So if you don't particularly like trading around news, obviously switch these to true, and then they will prevent that from happening. I personally quite enjoy when Draghi starts speaking and we get a lot of volatility on the euro dollar and euro yen. So that's the reason for that. With just the ECN broker setting, that's standard. And again, because I want to use this system at any time of the day or night, it's not dependent on any robots taking trades at the wrong time periods. I may be using it in the Asian session, in which case I will only probably run it on the Asian currencies, Aussie and Kiwi and yen. If I'm running it during the London session or the Euro session, I'll be looking at the different currency pairs, but it's up to me. It's very much a manual system, and you decide. So I don't need it to be limited to any particular start or end times. Lot size, again, down to your own personal money management. Obviously, we're looking for every trade setup at 10 pips stop loss. So you've got to work out the lot size times the 10 pips. It's a nice and easy round number. What's your percentage risk that you want to take? So obviously each trade setup has its own risk factor as well, which you can multiply by the lot size to give you your eventual lot size for any particular setup. I just like to keep things nice and simple and have one lot there and then change it on the risk factor for a given trade setup. I do actually allow 5 orders to be on running concurrently. Again, that has to be born into the lots. I allow a max spread of 3 and slippage of 2. The levels range 2 pips. I like my orange to white band shades to be fairly closely knitted together in order to be considered a level. So that's what basically that is. I think that's orange to white trades are the only ones that are affected by that. well, actually any dynamic target probably is as well. So I think that's the standard that Sam uses anyway, an alert time out of 3. I'm not using dynamic stops because I've got a fixed stop of 10, so that's set to false. Now, as I said earlier on, I personally I'm not using power of 20, but if you wanted to incorporate the power of 20 into your scalping that you're doing with these rapid fire settings, you could set that to allowed, and obviously as soon as you've made your percentage with the set number of pips, then it'll switch off the alerts for you. I've got 20 pips as equaling 1% here, so 40 pips, which is my average take, would be 2% count growth. So Sam's done a really good video on that, so I don't need to really cover that here. Don't intend to. Again, global scale out, because we're taking 8 pips on every trade, I'm not doing a global scale out. Now moving on to which trade setups I like. I do allow a trend, a 1-minute trend, only in very specific circumstances, i.e. when price is really moving quickly, the trend is very strong, and it's very unlikely that you'll ever get back to the 5-minute box. For a 5-minute trend entry, I will get into a 1-minute trend, but again, I will analyze that at each time. So I allow the alert to happen, and then I will decide whether or not I'm happy with the entry conditions. What I don't want to do is actually enter at the 1-minute box. That's switched to false. I enter on at the 1-minute white zone, if at all, which just gives you a bit further of retracement back to get into the trade. So hopefully it will reduce any negative tendencies. Okay, so we'll enter at this white zone entry is true. I allow 5-minute trends, but as you'll see later on, the trend bot is switched off. So it's not going to get me into any 5-minute trends automatically. I want to see the alert, and I will judge it and get into it if I like the setup. I don't allow 15-minute trends because a 10-pip stop loss is not sufficient for a 15-minute trend to work in a wiggle room. So I don't allow those, and I don't allow 5-minute stop or 15-minute stop trend trades, so that no trades get triggered while I may already be in a 5-minute trend trade. I don't want a 5 or a 15-minute stop trade entering in the same direction while I'm scalping. So those are set to false. I don't do bounce. Bounce trade is effectively a version of orange to white, but I don't like the way the VTA defines those. The bounce 15 also, I'm not happy with those setups, so I switch those off. I do, of course, allow orange to white, which is my favourite type of trade still, purely down to the fact that they happen quickly, or hopefully they happen quickly, and you can make some quick pips and get out of the market very quickly. I also allow reversals, extended reversals. As Cash says, you can never say no to an extended reversal. However, I don't like the way, well, I personally am not very successful with pre-reversals or extended pre-reversals. So I don't know if it's just a personal thing. I just have those switched off. If you particularly like that setup, then you like to get into trends early or reversals early, then that's up to you. But I've got those switched off. Now the other trade setup that is very successful I think along with the 5-minute trend, this is possibly the second best performing setup, the L1, L7 cross on the 5-minute time frame. I allow those. I don't allow the 15 and the 60s because, again, the 10 pip stop is just not enough to give it enough room, so that it will probably end up being stopped out all the time at -10 if you try to let those run. Now I've got tripod set to false at the moment. The settings file that I'm actually looking at is the one that I've copied into the VTA room in the documents folder. So you can pick it up from there. I'm in two minds about tripods. Sometimes they work quite quickly. A lot of the time I find they tend to take quite a long time to work. They do work eventually, but as I said before, I'm more of a scalper and I don't like being in the market sitting on trades that are going nowhere. And tripods can do that for quite some time. So they take time to work out. So for the purposes of rapid fire, I've decided I'm not going to get involved with any tripod setups. That's not to say they're not successful, but personally I just don't like them. Okay, so if we just quickly go through, so these settings are effectively the default settings, but with a few tweaks where I've switched off various settings. So I'll just go through a few of them and show you where. Okay. 1-minute trends, I'm generally starting at 6 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't really matter what the start time is there. But the important thing is generally you don't want to be entering any trend trade after 4 o'clock. And so the actual GMT time to put in to stop that happening is 14, i.e. 2 o'clock, which GMT, so it's 3 o'clock. So by the end of the 3 o'clock hour, which is 15:59, is 4 o'clock. So for not to enter any 1-minute trends, you have to put that value at 14. Threw us for a while. I had 15. Okay, so this is where the rapid fire settings come in. I've got a fixed trend 1 stop at 100, which is 10 pips, and I've got a target at 8 pips. I've got a risk factor of 1, so my 1 lot means with a risk factor of 1, I'm trading 1 lot here. If I was less happy about them, I'd reduce that down to probably 0.5. The other important thing here, as I mentioned earlier, is one-click entry. Basically, as I said, I'm relying on getting an alert, checking the grids, checking the charts within 5-10 seconds. If I've made a decision that that's a good setup, I then want to click an entry and get the trade on. I don't want to wait for any candle closing, even if it may be just a 1-minute candle. So for all of the setups in this settings file, you'll find that one-click entry is true. So you're not relying on the VTA to do any testing to see if the next candle isn't in the direction you're wanting to go in. You know, it won't take the trade. There's none of that. It's your decision. You enter the trade. Okay, now the setups: 3 clear lanes, 10 pips, clear pips, etc., etc. So all these settings here are as per the standard defaults. Right, dynamic targets have been switched off because we're going for a fixed 8 pip stop or 8 pip take profit. So I don't need any dynamic targets. I have got dynamic stops true, so that I can use the L7 stop, which may or may not be less than 10 pips. If it is less than 10 pips, I'll use the L7 stop, otherwise it'll stop out at 10 pips. So all the other dynamic stops are set to false. I've got no trailing stops, not interested in that, and scale out is also false. So we're not doing any scaling out, taking half off or anything like that. We're not doing any trailing stops. However, I do have the trade protector in, and I'll just explain why. A lot of the time we've seen trades will go positive. I'm particularly thinking of orange to white trades at the moment. They'll go positive, 5 pips maybe, and then suddenly they'll retrace on you and then go minus 10. And it's so annoying to see 5 pips of positive then become a loser. So I personally think if I've seen a trade go plus 5, I don't want it to lose. So I'm setting the take profit, the protected stop, moving to plus 1, which basically covers the cost of that trade in terms of the commission that you've paid for those trading on sites where you've got commission. So I used to have this set to 8 and 3, and I was seeing a lot of plus 3s, which is why I originally thought, well, hang on, let's just take profit at 8 then and not mess around. But I think now I'm basically saying if it's gone 5, I don't want to lose money on it. And quite often what happens in an orange to white trade is that in a trend, because you're going against the trend, if it goes against the trend 5 and then it retraces back, it might come back to the same level, it might go beyond it. And if you get stopped out plus 1, price continues against it, you will then get another alert for another orange to white at the same level as it was before. You can then take that second bite approach, and if it goes slightly beyond the levels, it then becomes more likely that it will actually work. So you can re-enter an orange to white and take the trade again. And the first one hasn't cost you anything because you got out plus 1. So I think the 5-1 trade protection works particularly well on orange to white, where you get an opportunity to re-enter. Maybe not on the trend trades, but I've just decided that I personally just prefer money management wise not to lose money when I've seen plus 5. Again, that's up to you. If you decide that you have a different value that you'd like to put on it, please don't hesitate to change it and raise it in a discussion on the forum. That's what it's all about. If we all cooperate, communicate with our settings and our experiences, then hopefully at the end of the day we'll end up with a pretty good settings file and a tool that will make us all money. That's the end of the aim of this this exercise. Okay, trend 5 settings. Again, these are all based around Sam's original dynamic 11, which did prove to be very profitable. Again, I've got start and end times. The tiger bot, as you see, is false, set to false, so it's not going to enter any trades automatically for me. I will get an alert and I will have to accept it in order for it to place the 5-minute trend trade. Again, I've got a stop of 10 pips, target of 8, risk factor 1, and the rest of the settings, the 2 clear lanes, the 10 pips, etc., they're all basically Sam's defaults for these settings. White zone entry false, 1-click entry is true, as in all these setups. I've not got any stochastic entries. Dynamic targets is set to false. So I'm not looking at any dynamic targets. I do have dynamic stops switched on, set to true, because again, I'm actually using the L5 as a dynamic stop, and also the L7. I think the L7 is really more of an emergency, and probably 9 times out of 10 it'll be more than 10 pips away anyway, so you'll be stopped out before you hit it. But I have been using the L5 as a stop, and that sometimes is within 7 or 8 pips. And I believe that once price has gone as far as the L5, it's not going to work anyway. So quite happy to do that. Scale out again is false. Trailing stops false. Trade protector is on at 5 and 1 again. Now, as I said earlier on, trend 15s aren't actually allowed. It won't alert on a 15-minute trend purely because with a 10-pip stop, you'd probably find that most of them would be stopped out. So we can ignore all the 15-minute trend settings. I haven't got 5-minute stock trends on either, or the 15. So we can move on to the orange to white. Again, these are my favorites, but again, fixed stop, 10-pip stop loss, 8-pip target, risk factor 1, one-click entry. It's probably the most important setup to have one-click entry on, because you do need to be accurate. You need to get that timing just right so that price is just hitting the band shades or just slightly beyond them. So you want the one-click entry. Now I've got a slightly more aggressive setting here than Sam's standard. I think he wants to only take orange to whites if there's 20 pips back to the 1 minute box. Now my thinking is along the lines that because I'm only taking 8 pips, I don't need 20 pips of room back to the 1 minute box, which is generally for a standard orange to white before we had the VTA, the 1 minute box is the target to take profit. So obviously the further away it is, the bigger your potential win. Now because I'm fixing the take profit at 8 pips, I don't need the 1 minute box further away than the 10 really, and obviously the boxes will move towards the entry. But if the orange to white works quickly, as they often do, then basically you don't need them further away than 12. In fact, you could probably get away with 10, and you would in fact get more alerts if you had this set to 10. But that is slightly aggressive, so I've left it at 12. But you will find that you get quite a number of orange to white alerts. And I'm also saying the minimum roadblock is 2 rather than 3. Again, it's down to, it's a bit down to experience of judging. When you look at the grids, 2 dark orange roadblocks together in good alignment is a good, and is sometimes better than 3 paler ones that are slightly out of alignment. So it's down to judgment, but at least if you set the bar lower and say only 2, then you'll get multiple alerts, and then you can take your pick and be picky about it, because you don't need to take every single one. If you just you want to get 3 or 4 winning trades in a day, it's not rocket science. You don't need to take every single trade. You will get multiple alerts. So again, dynamic targets is set to false because we're taking a straightforward take profit of 8, and not worried about minimum target roadblocks. So these are all false. Scale out's false. No trailing stops. So we're basically taking 8 pips straight profit, and we do have the trade protector on at 5 and 1. Okay, hopefully now you're beginning to see a bit of a pattern coming through. The reversals, dynamic targets is switched off. Got the dynamic stops set to true because, again, I'm using the L7 somewhere. Sort of can't see it at the moment, but got a fixed stop of 10, target of 8, risk factor 1. And all of these, basically, the entry criteria are the same for as basically Sam's default settings that came with it. So I've set all the targets are set to false. We're not doing any scale out. We're not doing a trailing stop. And we have the trade protector set to true at 5 and 1. The 5-minute reversal trade is allowed. You get a reasonable number. I don't allow the 15 again because the 10 pip stop's not going to be big enough. So the next trade setup is the extended reversal. As Cash says, these are the ones you never say no to. So again, running through it, 10 pip stop, 8 pip target, risk factor 1.5. I put that in, I increased that because the number of times these extended reversals win is in the high 80s, 90%. So you can afford to put a bit, not quite the kitchen sink, but increase the lot size on these. One-click entry, as always. Again, these settings are as per the standard settings. I'll ignore all the target information because we're just going for a fixed amount. Dynamic stop set to true, not the swing stop. Scale out, no trailing stop. And I've got, again, trade protector. So I personally don't like the pre-reversals. So, or the extended pre-reversal. The bounce, I think the bounce has to have some, I think an hour in it at the same level as the band shades. I'm not sure, but I think Sam has basically said please ignore the bounce and the bounce 15 setups for the moment. And I personally have got the tripods switched off. I think at the moment these settings are good to go. So again, it's 10 and 8, risk factor 1. I suppose I could switch these on and put the risk factor down to a half and just see if they do actually work. But one-click entry, then 12 pips to the 5-minute box. Dynamic targets are all off. We've got dynamic stops true. No scale out, no trailing profit, and the trade protector is set to true with a 5 and 1. Okay, so that's the tripod. It's let's say I'm not convinced yet that I like them, but I only like them when they work quickly, put it that way. Okay, L1, L7, this is the good setup, another good setup, which I allow on the 5-minute. So again, you just set the stops at 10, target 8, risk factor 1, one-click entry, and switch everything else off. No scale out, no trailing stops. Trade protector is on the 5 and 1. Now, the 15-minute L1, L7 and the 60-minute one I don't go for, as I tend to find you need much bigger stops. Those. So they're all switched off in the master settings. So I've got the dynamic stops turned on in the L1N7 master settings there. And that's it. This is just the magic numbers. Changed anything there. So that's basically it. I hope that's made the rationale clear on what I'm trying to achieve with these settings. It's not the automated money management side of things. Very much these settings are there to help you scalp manually when you're sitting at the screen and you're judging whether a trade is worth it, and then you're in and out for a quick 8 pips and moving on to the next one. And you basically just want to be doing that 4 or 5 times a day and then be done with your trading. That's the theory. All the automation is basically switched off. So what we'll do now is basically we'll close this session now. We'll organise a session in the VTA room where we can all get together and talk about it. Hopefully some of you will try it. I'd love to hear your results, good and bad. I mean, we've already got a variation. Someone wanted a 7 pip win, and if you wanted to do that, all you could need to do is change each of these places where it's 80, and you could set it to 70, and it would work on exactly the same basis. Or you might put it to 100. I know a few people have tried them and have had success. David, I was really pleased to see that David Gent yesterday, he got 7 out of 8. So he's actually netted 46 pips with 1 7, 7 8 of 56, and he lost 1, which was 10. So he's netted 46 pips. Using the rapid fire settings. So I look forward to hearing from you. Either join in on the forum or we'll see you in the VTA room. If anyone is not sure how to load these settings once you've downloaded them from the documents folder, please don't hesitate to ask. You see me around either in the main room or the VTA room, or just put a question on the forum and we'll get in touch and we can walk you through how to get them loaded up and make sure they're working for you. So I'm going to sign off now. Good luck. I hope they work for you. Please let me know, as I say, either way. And the more we collaborate, as I say, the more we collaborate and we share results and settings, the better we can make it for everyone. So I do appreciate any feedback, and I'm sure Sam will as well. So I'll sign off now, and I'll see you in the VTA room.